So for new viewers of the channel, I would like to retell a story that deals with today's death video. This story surrounds a motorcycle accident that I was in when I was 17 years old. Several months before the accident, I remember a dream of a white angelic looking quill pen writing on a piece of parchment to be careful on my new motorcycle. The dream was present during the winter months, and I sincerely put very little thought into such a dream. Fast forward to the early spring months, and I was placing even less thought into the amount of sand that had accumulated on these roads during the winter. And of course, if you put the two together, the sand and the dream, voila, I ended up having a motorcycle accident. Now, the dream has its own mystery behind it, but the moment I will never truly forget is the experience of what I believed was going to be my own demise. Now, whether or not I was actually going to die, I'll leave that up to you. And I most certainly want to remind some viewers that just falling from the second rung of a ladder at the right angle could actually end your life prematurely. But the fact of the matter was that I knew that my life was in danger. And whether a combination of endorphins, serotonin, and or even DMT being released during the event, or perhaps an angelic intervention, what I do remember is an overwhelming sense of peace and love that I had never experienced before, and I believe I will never experience again. It was like a warm blanket wrapped around me, with the words "let go," as in let go of the handlebars, to the motorcycle resonating in my mind. Now, for anyone that's ever been in a motorcycle accident, I would imagine for most people out there, it would be like riding a bull, where the last thing you want to do is to let go. Of course, as you're plummeting to the ground, worrying about saving your own skin. And consequently, the only thing that was going on in my mind during that time was to hold on to the handlebars for dear life. And of course, that made such a message incongruent in my mind as to something that I did not want to do. But bizarrely, I ended up still listening to this voice by simply just trusting it. I'm glad that I had, since the right handlebar would have most certainly crushed my hand in the gas tank that received a 2-inch deep divot from the amount of force that jerked the handlebar as I dove out of control. After blacking out for a minute or so, I remember the motorcycle stalling when I first came to, and how shocked I was despite the left side of my jeans being torn up some, and the fact that I didn't even have a scratch on me. So trust me when I say the experience of perceived death is not a scary ordeal, either for the divine or, of course, psychological and also biological reasons. Ever since this incident, I have questioned what happens when a person dies. A scenario that most certainly eventually propelled my finding of the Urantia Book. The book teaches us that the moment of transition from the material life of Urantia to the initial awakening on the mansion worlds is not a leap into a nebulous, ghostly ether, but rather a profound and structured resurrection of the individual consciousness into a mostly material vessel. When a mortal of the realm sleeps the final and only sleep of death, the physical body returns to the dust of the world. But the spiritual potential, the identity of the soul, and the record of the mind is held in custody of the celestial guardians. So in other words, your individuality and volition is left intact. That is the gift of the Universal Father. Your soul, created by your thought adjuster, is lovingly held in a state of stasis, and your entire experiential life is etched into eternity through this divine spark of the Universal Father that was once inside of you. Dependent on your actions, inactions, and propensity towards divine values, most souls on our rebellious planet become what is known as sleeping survivors. They must wait to be adjudicated by a paradise son to receive the mercy ministry that appears to be more in line with the possibility of a spirit-fused ascender during the dispensational period, which vaguely coincides with the rapture many Christians still believe in. For others who have made considerable spiritual progression, they receive their own set of guardian angels that, with the approval of your adjuster and a universal censor, briefly review your case with the potential for immediate release from this planet onto your next planet of assignment. This experience is the first great step into the ascension of a human being, a process that begins with the bright light of the first mansion world that greets the newly awakened personality. This process can sometimes lead to father-fused individuals that literally combine themselves with the very spirit of the father, the thought adjuster that is residing inside of you at this very moment. However, even for the further along souls that receive this special reassignment, this fusion is not immediate. And like most ascenders, you have to make your way under a series of rehabilitation or training worlds to make yourself capable of this spiritual potential. For both Sleeping Survivor and immediate ascension candidates, typically the second chapter of your existence is roughly the same, where you find yourself on a new planet and a new Urantia body. No, when you first awaken on the first of many planets of your assignment, you will only have a vague recollection of your memories, and of course, who you were. However, the relationships they had once had with others will quickly come back to you. You may not remember your fellow ascenders' names on Urantia, but you will most certainly remember that you had a significant relationship with that person. Some memories you will retrieve from various record halls that review the seraphic record of your life, and others of spiritual significance will be shared directly by your indwelling adjuster. After a long paradise ascent towards the center of all things in paradise, there will even be individuals can use Supernifem, such as broadcasters and reflectors that often function as living newspapers, to instantly assimilate information. For those lucky few that become mighty messengers and are embraced by the Holy Trinity, then all your previous memories and experiences will be left completely intact, having cosmic significance. Urantia material is a substance that exists between the realms of the material and the spiritual. On a person's traditional first world of assignment, such a Urantia body is almost wholly material. And as progress further towards spiritual vibrational states, so too does your body begin following said pattern. Despite your Urantia body awaiting you in the next life, this substance isn't wholly foreign to you either. It is what your adjuster is weaving at this very moment inside of you, and it is used for a variety of more permanent spiritual constructions. These include the soul, Urantia body, and sometimes in the construction of buildings, such as the Urantia temple itself, that will be constructed on our planet during the Age of Light and Life. As a fun fact, this temple is nearly indestructible, just like your human soul, which is built to withstand the chariots of fire fusion with the adjusters that generally occurs regularly in the later planetary ages, found in 55 1.5. Negative. Currently, with the state of affairs on our planet, this occurrence is currently extremely rare. However, when we make our way to our next planet of assignment, our first awakening is often described as a gradual return to awareness, a resurrection that occurs on the third period after death, or perhaps much later for those whose souls require a little longer period of terrestrial rest. Regardless of the duration, the experience of opening up one's eyes on a Urantia sphere is a sensory and spiritual revelation that defies the limited vocabulary of the material world. As you make your way to many planets in multiple forms, your perceptory awareness of higher spiritual entities will surely enhance as you begin to witness the many celestial brothers and sisters we have in the Master Universe. The first sensation of a ascending mortal is the realization of a new body. This is the Urantia form, a state of being that is neither purely material nor purely spiritual, but a sophisticated bridge between the two. In the Urantia book, this is described as the intervening state of existence. No, you don't wake up on a vaporous cloud, even though that would be totally awesome. You wake up in a body that has form. You wake up in a form that has weight, texture, and a refined set of senses that far surpass the five senses of the human biological machine. However, this body is new and improved, having no longer a specified differentiator and 45 6.7, with the exception of your masculine or feminine energy that tends to follow you along your ascension career. Now, whether or not you're going to have creator prerogatives is undetermined given the fact that, yes, you won't have sex organs, but there are still opportunities to do something like that in the future. Since technically there are ascender liaisons that you can have with other beings, such as Paradise Havona citizens, that can lead to supreme ultimate beings being conceived. Mind-blowing stuff, I know. Found in 22.7.14. For those of you that are proficient in the Urantia book, I often picture these liaisons, much like the original creation of our primary midwayers. For those of you that are clueless as to what these entities are, I strongly encourage you to watch more of my long content. Either way, dependent on the path you're given to choose from, you will find yourself in the resurrection halls of the first mentioned world, surrounded by celestial artisans and the Sephiric guardians who have tracked your progress since your earliest days on Urantia. Don't worry. Angels can relate more to you than you think, generally having more emotions than we do, with of course the exception of fear. And yes, I'm planning on using this as an opportunity to apologize for all the awkward moments that I created, that of course they witnessed. Humor aside, despite the planet you are now on most certainly being material, the era itself feels different. It is charged with the vitality that nourishes the Urantia body, eliminating the need for the heavy chemical-based nutrition required on the evolutionary planets. In fact, there is a new form of sustenance that you can choose from on this planet that both sustains you with no need for various forms of excrement or residual waste. Yep, number 1 and number 2 are no longer idioms or euphemisms for going to the bathroom on these planets. As the newly arrived Mansion World student begins to explore this first sphere, the most striking realization is the sheer skill and beauty of the architecture and the environment. These worlds are not natural accidents of stellar evolution, or even experimental planets like Urantia. They are architectural spheres, specifically designed and constructed by the celestial master physical controllers that serve as the training grounds for ascending mortals. Your eternal journey begins at the resurrection halls. You wake up much like you went to sleep on Earth, but with a new Urantia body, a form that is not quite physical, but not yet purely spiritual. The first thing you notice is that your memory, again, is vaguely intact, slowly realizing that you are still you. The first world is about remediation. If you lacked certain essential human experiences, like the opportunity to be a parent or to live in a harmonious family, you begin to make up those deficiencies here. After all, to be perfect and experience like our Heavenly Father does, then you must first experience things such as brotherly love. It is a place of intense catching up, where the biological and social gaps of your earthly life are filled. It is a beautiful correction and form of rehabilitative cosmic justice associated with individuals who never had the blessings of being a parent and a child who did not live long enough to enjoy the divine action of paternal love. And of course, once you find your footing in the first world, you make your way to the second. Here, the focus shifts from the individual to the group. You begin to live in formal communities and learn how to function within a celestial society. This world is designed to heal intellectual conflict. If you're arrived with mental disharmony or narrow-minded prejudices, this is where you learn to harmonize your thinking with others from vastly different planets. For those of you that gawked when I said that Urantia was a rebellion planet, this is where it all begins to make sense. It's been my experience as a psychotherapist to suggest that it is those individuals that complain about the lack of human decency and concern for one another that are the last ones to provide it. As a brief example, I can't begin to tell you how many times I have former clients attempting to hit me up on personal social media pages to befriend me. Even if this was an acceptable ethical practice, which it isn't, I often say to myself that many of these clients do not know my hobbies, interests, the names of my children, or the fact that I even have children, to even remotely suggest that we have something more than a simple professional relationship. After all, a professional typically only provides non-reciprocal service, with monetary compensation of some sort the only expectation of the provider, while a true friendship has lasting reciprocity and true care and concern for the other person. In 47.4.2, we learn that in all the worlds of ascension, you'll find nothing comparable to human intolerance and the discriminations of the inconsiderate, case systems. It's also on this planet that you have your first exposure to the Sea of Glass, associated with universe broadcasts. It is in this sphere that N 47 4.8 indicates that intellectual conflict and varieties of mental disharmony are almost completely removed. The third world is the Great Educational Center. This is the headquarters of the Mansion World teachers. Now that your character is stabilized and your social skills are growing, you begin a more positive education. You start to understand the moda, the cosmic logic of the universe, combined with human philosophy. It is a world of great personal achievement where you begin to feel truly at home in the universe. Here, you have an opportunity towards meeting the advanced and glorified cherubim that serve as Mansion World teachers. As a brief self-disclosure here, it appears that I have had numerous dreams of being taken to this world. Whether they are remarkable or unremarkable dreams, as portrayed in the Urantia Book, these worlds I believe I witnessed are amazing, with buildings with waterfalls cascading off of the sides, and enormous universities with hallways that seem to go on forever, with many of them having similar construction to kind of like that Tony Stark house in that Marvel movie that I can't mention. On the fourth world, you enter a stage of deep socialization. You spend more time with various orders of celestial beings, such as the brilliant evening stars, that are entities nearing the middle of the bridge between yourself and God. You are no longer just a student. You are becoming a contributing member of the local universe culture. You are learning to master the balance between your personality and the needs of the greater whole. In essence, you are shedding the tabernacles of selfishness, conquest, and personal aggrandizement, realizing that everyone and everything has their proper place and equal level of importance. It should be noted that for planets already experiencing a post-teacher-son age, that these tenets and principles are already known by such ascenders, imagining that many of them might even bypass this planet almost entirely. The fifth world is described as a turning point. Here you experience the birth of cosmic consciousness. You stop thinking like a citizen of a single planet, Urantia, and start thinking like a citizen of the entire universe. You begin to study the languages of the higher realms and prepare for the even greater journey through the constellation and beyond. This planet becomes part of your ascension career as a turning point when the ascender becomes excited about learning, unselfish service, and begins the action of spontaneous worship. On the sixth world, you stop thinking like a thinking creature and start becoming a spiritual creature. This is where you more fully align with the will of the divine. You start to encounter the high Melchizedeks and begin the final preparations for the fusion with your indwelling spirit, the thought adjuster. That, of course, has not happened yet. Yep, depending on your overall readiness. That could happen at any time during your early paradise ascent. In fact, it's this world that really starts exhibiting mortals or ascenders that finally fuse with their adjusters. And that's when you become spirit, being given their final universe names found in 47 8.5. It is a world of profound beauty and high-level intellectual philosophy where sympathy and tolerance from others are the norm and are no longer the exception. The final mansion world is the launch pad. All of the scaffolding of a material nature has been removed. In 47 9.1, we learn that the last remnants of the mark of the beast are eradicated on this planet. Yep, for those of you that haven't figured out that the 666 is our planetary ending number, you have been corrected of your flaws, expanded your mind, and awakened your spirit. From here, you're no longer a Mansion World student. You are a Jerusalem citizen. You are ready to leave the nursery of the local system and begin the true ascent toward the center of all things. Just keep in mind that our local universe sovereign, Christ Michael, is perhaps one of the most merciful, motherly sovereigns in our super universe, being most representative of the eternal Son. This predisposition likely affects most ascension aspects that you have encountered up until this point. However, once you reach your way to greater and higher ideals, more will be expected from you. In fact, if we are ever lucky enough to be in the direct service of God the Supreme, I would believe their rule would be different than perhaps the rule we have seen from the Sacred Trinity itself. But that's just a hunch that I have. Thank you again for watching today's video, your continued support, and I'll see you on the next one.